All right, welcome everybody. We're going to give it just a few more minutes and then we'll get started. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everyone to our July membership meeting. We're happy today, Burke Motor Group are sponsoring the lunch. I just want to let everyone know that there's some great sponsorship opportunities available for our lunch meetings, the many webinars that we host as well. So please get in contact with John over at the Chamber. Obviously, sponsorships, since we've changed how we kind of operated the Chamber, and now we do a lot more of these Zoom, obviously these Zoom-based meetings. We very much are going to depend upon sponsors to help us and the great staff that we have over at the Chamber. So please get in contact with John about those opportunities. It's my pleasure today to welcome back our speaker, Dr. Cook, Associate Professor of Economics at Stockton University. Obviously, everyone I think on this call remembers Dr. Cook presented for us back in February. I think that was over at the Avalon Country Club. Dr. Cook, the world certainly changed a little bit since the last time you were with us. So we're excited to have you back today. We were chatting a little bit before we all came on the call about, obviously the impacts upon our economy, and you've been monitoring those closely, and I don't envy your job right now. So I'm going to have you take over, but I just want to let quickly everyone know, use the chat feature on our call today. Vicky's going to moderate after Dr. Cook presents, but I'm always excited to have Dr. Cook on the great information he brings. So if you have any questions along the way, please enter those in the chat, and then Vicky will get to them during the Q&A session. So with that, Dr. Cook, thank you for being here today, and the time is yours. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thanks so much again for the Chamber. It's nice to see many of you again. I have to say, I certainly wish, I'm sure I'm share everyone's sentiments here, that we wish the circumstances were quite different. So let me kind of start with, I guess, what is probably, obviously, painfully obvious to many of us. The COVID pandemic has obviously pushed the national economy into recession, effectively ending what had been kind of the longest business cycle expansion in recorded history, which is remarkable, thinking that, since the middle of 2009, the U.S. economy was officially in an expansionary mode, recovering from the Great Recession. And the group, the National Bureau of Economic Research, which is charged with dating these things officially, of course, ex post, the obvious fact, did in fact come out about 5 weeks ago or so and indicate that February was the peak, and the economy had kind of formally tipped into recession the following month as the lockdowns went into effect. So at the same time, I guess that there's very little good economic news to report. That fact is, I think most of us would agree, is obviously squarely tied to the somewhat good public health news, at least for New Jersey at the moment, underscoring, of course, underlining the at the moment, given what we see kind of cascading around the rest of the country right now. But in particular, it does seem that the the state's lockdowns of the past spring, which have obviously created all sorts of economic pain for arguably millions of New Jerseyans, did indeed serve to tamp down the virus's spread, and at least give us the seeming ability to try to get the economy back on track over the rest of the summer to some extent, and then into the fall. So what I would like to do today is kind of just very briefly walk through some basic stats that kind of give you a sense of what the regional economy kind of looks like, at least what it looked like in May. Unfortunately, June data, which will really be key in kind of giving us, I think, a better sense of what happened early as we moved into the real summer session, won't be out for another couple of weeks. So, as I indicated to folks that were on the call earlier, I'll kind of be eager to hear from kind of the small business community and get a better sense of what's actually going on in the trenches. But in any event, I'll kind of follow that up with some comments about fiscal policy, some other key issues, and then maybe just briefly revisit some COVID impact estimates that I originally kind of produced in April, kind of when we were just getting started. It seems so long ago. So in any event, Nina, if you could cue that first slide for me. So job losses. All of this is actually through, as noted here, May. This is all establishment employment from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, just some kind of big headline numbers shown there. Cape May County, which is obviously synonymous, coincident with the metropolitan area, the Ocean City metropolitan area. Jobs were down about 27% year on year. In May, that was a little over 12,000 jobs. Not surprisingly, of course, the vast majority of those jobs, nearly 70% or so, were tied to L&H, leisure and hospitality specifically. For those of you who don't know, leisure and hospitality includes accommodations, restaurants and bars, along with entertainment and these kinds of things. It's kind of a larger sector that includes several different industries inside of it. And then retail trade was responsible, as shown there, for roughly another 11% or so of lost jobs in Cape May County. So bringing the total to somewhere close to about 80%. That was largely matched, as you can see here, in terms of the sectoral and industry breakout in Atlantic City. Atlantic City's loss, not surprisingly, given the casino story, was a little bit larger year over year in May. Both in absolute terms and in proportional terms as well. The retail trade losses were a little bit less. But again, if you kind of add the retail trade and the leisure and hospitality, you're very close to 80% in Atlantic City as well. To kind of give you a sense, nationally, in May, employment was off about 12%, and leisure and hospitality nationally accounted for closer to about 40%. Of national job losses year on year in May. So kind of gives you a good sense, obviously, I don't think terribly surprising to anyone, given the nature of the lockdown and the industries that were disproportionately affected by it, where, what this looked like in terms of, proportional losses in South Jersey's economy. The unemployment story, you can see here in the little table, I hope, on the right-hand side. This is a picture of March and then May, which gives you a very good kind of snapshot of what happened over these first couple of months of lockdown. You can see Ocean City's official unemployment rate rose to nearly 25% from a place of around just north of 7% or so, more than a tripling in the total number of individuals that were officially unemployed. Not necessarily synonymous, I should add, with the people who have filed unemployment claims, right? A little bit different. You can see kind of how this, what this looked like in Atlantic City. Atlantic City's rise in the unemployment rate a little bit steeper than what we saw in Cape May, and the benchmarks, the statewide increase along with the national increase. I should add, most of you probably will have read at some point over the last couple of months that, there's a decent debate now taking place among economists and other market watchers about, what we should really make of the unemployment numbers. There are lots of obvious issues that are, that make it difficult to kind of parse out what's really going on with the rates. Probably most importantly, the basic unemployment rate is you count up the number of people that are unemployed and then you divide it by the labor force. And so the official government definition of, who's in the labor force and who's unemployed demands that someone be actively searching. But for obvious reasons, this is a poorly suited measure given lockdowns, right, that are asking people to stay home. So, trying to actually figure out, what the labor force is, what the denominator is, and who should really be counted or not is obviously fraught with all sorts of, methodological issues. So perhaps not the best indicator, or at least less useful than it usually might be. But nevertheless, I think pretty clear for everyone that, it speaks volumes that in 2 months, you've seen these kinds of, rises in unemployment rates, just unprecedented. The U6 rate that I mentioned here is a little bit broader, kind of alternative metric that is published every month by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and gives a kind of a different, again, broader sense of underutilization of labor resources in the economy. Most people wouldn't know, but the official unemployment rate, there are actually 6 that are produced, is U3. That's the headline rate. But the U6 that's shown here, is about 21% nationally. And this includes, among other things, people that are working part-time involuntarily. It also includes a group of workers that are referred to as the discouraged population. It kind of pulls these people back into the calculation. The larger point, of course, is that if you think about what the national rate was in May, about 11%, or I think maybe back in May it was even north of that, 14 and change. You can get a sense of 7-8 percentage points north, this U6 rate relative to the official rate, probably worth adding on 4 to 8 percentage points to what you see here at the state rate and some of these local rates, and rather telling in that sense. That said, we're about 2 weeks out, as noted here at the bottom, from getting June data that will provide us a much better sense of what went on last month as we saw some of these lockdowns start to be released. More and more states start to open up. At the national level, I think it was somewhat of a surprise. Most of you probably saw this in the headlines. The June job gain nationally was almost 5 million. And a good portion of that was tied to L&H employment. So to some extent, that's probably good news for South Jersey. In any event, Nina, can you cue the next one? So a couple of additional kind of metrics that I watch that I think many folks in South Jersey typically watch. The tax, the hotel and motel tax receipts are oftentimes used to kind of get a good sense of what's going on a monthly basis at the shore, as well as easy toll transactions. And you can see, not surprisingly here in the details, unsurprisingly, huge declines. The most recent report out of the Treasury Department, the state Treasury Department, noted that the sales and use tax, which is, as I note here, the largest source of tax for the general fund, was down an unprecedented almost 30% year on year in May. This makes, as I note here, the parenthetical, makes what happened in June of 2009, right? This was kind of the crunch of the fiscal crisis during the Great Recession. look relatively small, right? Down almost 18% at that time. So I'll come back to this idea of fiscal crisis momentarily, but you get a real good sense, if you take a look at the Egg Harbor stuff, the toll transactions, what shore traffic looked like in May. It'll be very interesting again to see what happens in June with the toll transactions and see if things kind of picked up last month or not. Silver linings, a lot of folks, talking about this at this point. Are there, obvious losers, needless to say, lots more losers, I think, than winners. But beyond kind of the obvious corporate, tech giants that I think everyone is obviously familiar with that are doing quite well, there are indeed lots of anecdotal reports of some smaller businesses that have managed to actually do okay over the last several months. Some of them obvious, some of them less obvious, and I've kind of enumerated some that the SBA nationally has noted in kind of a recent report. There's also, it seems to me, a good, healthy debate about the summer shore season, especially as it relates to rental homes. And so I'll be eager to kind of hear what folks have to say about this. But, one argument is that given quarantine fatigue, which I think we're all intimately familiar with at this point, along with the afraid to fly idea, might this actually end up perhaps paradoxically really helping summer shore rentals as we move along and lockdowns are eased and people become a little bit more comfortable over the course of the remainder of the summer. That's not my own sense, but I've heard this argument advanced in some quarters. What the ultimate kind of effect this will have on small businesses, on the boardwalks, in communities, I think is probably a little bit more subject to debate, perhaps, given the obvious social distancing constraints. As I note here, longer term, another similar debate that's kind of taking shape regards this question of kind of longer term real estate dynamics, especially important, I think, in a place like Cape May, to the extent that the so-called outmigration from larger cities continues over the next year or two, absent any kind of vaccine or antiviral treatment. What does this mean in terms of a place like Cape May that has a huge summer shore and vacation home population kind of moving out over the next few years? If you remember back in February, I spent some time discussing the very healthy real estate market in the southern regional economy, and so I think this is certainly something that should be debated and closely watched here as we move on over the coming quarters. Probably more looks like coming year or so. Finally, next slide for me, Nina, please. So fiscal response. I know that most folks probably on the call are familiar with the kind of flagship federal small business COVID program, the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, which obviously ran into lots of problems early on, and I think there's still lots of hiccups, probably understandable given the urgency with which it was kind of thrown together in an attempt to respond to what was, obviously a very, very difficult set of circumstances over the course of the spring. A lot of debate now over the extension. My own sense of the PPP is that it seems, likely that it will be extended upon Congress's return, which is, of course, imminent. I think, if I remember correctly, it has to go back to the House. I think that the Senate's already looked at this and effectively signed off on this, and the administration has already clearly indicated that it wants it to move to be extended. Most importantly, it's kind of hard to believe in many ways, the unprecedented fiscal response, by some counts as much as $3 trillion already that's poured out of DC. Hard to imagine saying, but I think I'll go ahead and say it anyway, simply not enough. yet. And most importantly, I think as we move into the fall, I think the biggest question for Congress is going to become what they're going to do at the state level. My own, advice, and I don't think I'm alone here in the world of economists at this point, thinking about, the next fiscal package that will be pushed through must be squarely aimed at states. There has been some provided states, but what has been provided is just woefully unshort given the absolute fiscal crisis that's going on across the country at the state level. And, this has obvious, huge knock-on effects. I mean, I think there's already been 1.5 million jobs at the local and state government levels that have been lost to date. Given, healthcare, public safety, obviously education at the center of what state governments do, absent a very large fiscal bailout of the states at this point, I think that any chance of any kind of real recovery in the second half of 2020 will be doomed from the get-go, frankly. Kind of to conclude here, the tightrope walking idea, I think this is obvious. My own sense of this is that we're going to be basically balancing, this obvious desperate need the rest of 2020 to get our lives back, our working lives back online, kids back in school, with the obvious need to continue to be very, very vigilant about maintaining, the success to date and kind of tamping down the virus's spread at this point. Definitely not an easy decision. I know my own school district, I'm sure most of you on the call can, also have stories. Very, very tough position for districts to be in as it regards to the question of school. I mean, who knew, right? I mean, no kids in school makes economic recovery unbelievably difficult, as everyone has just realized seemingly over the last, 4 to 6 weeks. But I think the school question absolutely is, will loom unbelievably large here over the next 6 weeks or so. Finally, let me close the remarks here briefly by mentioning again a set of estimates that I initially published that are accessible here via this link that I shamelessly, of course, plugged. Thank you, Nina. In April, along with a colleague that some of you may know, Tony Marino, in which we attempted to, very quickly put together some estimates of how bad things might look 2020 for the regional economy, using a very kind of austere model that we threw together. And as shown there, we kind of provided a range of estimates, the smallest being about 12% contraction, all the way up to about 28% or so. The median estimate was about 20%, a little north of 20%. That median estimate, I should note, basically what this model did was ask, okay, well, how quickly is the economy going to return to normal? And then once we return to normal, what's the likely drag going to be from COVID? And so this median estimate said, well, we're going to lose roughly about 6 weeks of summer activity in the South Jersey regional economy. And once we return to what becomes the new normal, the economy is going to run at about 85%. And that's the number that we actually come up with, about 20% year on year. That would be the loss in economic activity that occurs this year vis-a-vis what happened last year in the regional economy. And you can see that that's about almost $4 billion or so in terms of economic activity. To kind of provide a benchmark of what that actually means, right, as you can see here towards the bottom of the slide, looking back more than a decade ago at this point to the Great Recession, 2009, we saw the regional economy contract by not quite 10%, right? So I think it's safe to say that 2020's contraction will be certainly larger than what we saw in 2009. And I think what we're all, at this point, hoping, praying for is that the length of the recession is shorter than what it appears, at least in July, that it looks like that it's going to be. Because my own sense is that, this notion that the economy is going to bounce back and run at about 85% or so over the course of 2020, frankly, in July, looks rather utopian from where I sit today. So with that, I will, take questions. I'm certainly eager to hear what others have to contribute to this. I wish the news could be better, but it just ain't there. Not yet, folks.
Okay. So thank you, Dr. Cook. Don't see any questions in the chat. So please, if you have a question, feel free to type it in the chat or use the raised hand feature. While we wait for some of our folks to come up with their questions, I will ask a question, and that is, you shared a lot of information about unemployment, and so just reflecting back on that, as we see that the PUA runs through the end of this month, and we don't, as of right now, see an extension of that.
Correct.
Do you have any even anecdotal ideas about, what's going to happen, in August? Do you think that, all those state benefits have been extended? Do you think that we're going to see more people entering the job market come the 1st of August?
Yeah, I agree with you. I get the sense, just based on, what we're all reading in the press, that it's far less likely that the UI extension is going to continue. Much less likely, it seems, than the PPP being extended and some of these other policies and programs that have been put in place. And yes, to your question specifically, to the extent that these extended UI benefits come to an end, I do think that is going to send some folks back into the labor force. And to the extent that hiring remains very subdued, perhaps understandably, in light of the economic activity that businesses are seeing on the ground, I think that you're probably going to begin to see the unemployment rate rise again. You have folks that come back in that are officially going to be looking for employment, and to the extent that the jobs aren't there, then that's going to put some upward pressure on the unemployment rate. Now, of course, I think all of us obviously hope that turns out to be wrong, that the economy kind of snaps back. There's been a long-running debate now for several months over the shape of the so-called recovery. Initially, a lot of folks were thinking, well, after 8 to 10 weeks, we'll get this V-shaped recovery where it just kind of snaps back very quickly. Others saying, well, it's going to be kind of a U, kind of a much longer U. Some folks at this point, I think, worrying that we're looking at an L, where we're going to have very low levels of activity over the course of 2020 until some kind of antiviral treatment or something happens. So, I don't know. I do think that you're going to see folks obviously pushed without the comfort, so to speak, of the extensions for UI. I think most of you probably know, many folks are here, obviously small business owners. There's been an obvious debate in some parts of the country, I think less so in the Northeast than in other parts of the country, that to the extent folks were being provided the enhanced and extensions, right? This would provide them reasons to kind of sit on the sidelines, and be a little bit more choosy than they perhaps otherwise would be. But it's also true, I think, as most people know here, that the average UI benefit turns out to be something like 46% or so of most people's pay. So to the extent that UI disincentivizes people, I've never thought that it actually disincentivizes work. It perhaps makes people a little bit more choosy than they otherwise would be, is the way that I like to think of it. So.
Thank you. So we have a couple questions now coming in the chat.
Sure.
And so I'll give those to you. The first question is, if we have another 4 to 8 weeks of lockdown, what will that impact be?
Very good question. My sense is one of the, if I go back to the estimates that we provided in April, the largest estimate, which again was somewhere very close to 30% of a contraction, 28% or so, almost $5 billion. That was an estimate that was premised on almost the entire summer season being lost. So in other words, if you can imagine, you take this 8-week lockdown, for instance, right, and say, okay, well, here we are mid-July. Now we've lost all of the rest of the summer at that point if we go into another lockdown. And we've effectively already lost at a minimum, let's say, going back to Memorial Day, which was of course early this year, but let's say 2 to 3 real weeks of real summer activity. That was reflected in that kind of high estimate. You basically lose almost the entire summer, and the post, recovery economy runs at about 75%. So as more and more, and I'm talking now exclusively about the own regional economy, as more and more summer weeks, right, are adversely impacted, and as the COVID drag ratchets up, right, and so the economy runs at only 50% or 60% or 80% of what would be typical, that loss in terms of overall economic activity grows. And so again, that high estimate was a post-return to normalcy economy that's running at about 75%, and we basically lose the entire 2020 summer. And someone asked me the other day, a reporter called me and said, do you still stand by this? And, and if anything, we try to be try to not honestly engage in a lot of hyperbole, frankly, when we were doing that, try to give people a good sense and a good range of what we were looking at. I don't think at this point, when you kind of think about the national numbers, folks are saying that it could easily be that the national number, you see the U.S. economy contract anywhere from like 3 to 8-9% over 2020. If you look at what the U.S. economy did in 2009, the 2000 economy during the Great Recession nationally contracted about 2.5%. So the regional economy was 4x what happened in the national economy. So I don't think it takes, a lot of math to, imagine that if the national economy ends up contracting 5%, you could easily see how the regional economy gets to 20%, 25%, which would be remarkable. You're talking about a regional economy that's, roughly $19 billion or so, and you're getting ready to shave off $4 to $5 billion. It's remarkable.
Vicki, you're on mute.
Sorry, we have one more question, and then we'll turn it back over. So how can our local businesses relying on 5 months of travelers survive the off-season? Should the state get involved in preserving them? And if so, what does that look like?
Absolutely, the state should get involved in saving them. But to go back to my original comments, given the current fiscal crisis that the state finds itself in, understandably, watching plunging income receipts, sales receipts, and everything else, the only obvious, solution to the state fiscal crisis, which is of course hardly, hardly unique to New Jersey, is a massive federal response. My general sense is that there is a lot of discussion about what Congress plans to do in August as it relates to providing a lifeline, a serious lifeline to the states. For those of you that kind of watch these things, the administration just pushed through a stopgap budget within the last week and a half or so, whenever it was, was frankly just unbelievably draconian. And it looks, people are like, why, how can the state be cutting? But the state has to cut because it's constitutionally mandated to do so, just like, every other state and municipality is. So there is no easy solution for states and local governments at this point. It has to be a Washington-based solution. What that looks like, I think there are a variety of things in addition to managing to keep people on payrolls as they've done. A lot of those that are scheduled to convert to loans. My sense is that there should probably be a lot more in the way of like those being eventually turned over to grants, providing folks a lot more leeway in terms of what that money can be used for. One of the things I think many people can speak to this on the call, to the extent that those were understandably tied to keeping people on payrolls, they really hamstrung a lot of small businesses and their ability to actually move that federal money once they successfully got their hands on it out into the rest of the economy, paying vendors, for instance, right? That seems an obvious thing that small businesses have to do that obviously has knock-on effects in terms of keeping other folks, right, on payrolls elsewhere outside of the entity that actually received it. So to the extent that these kinds of tweaks have been made or will be made to many of these programs already in place, I think that's going to be vitally important. And I will close by saying, there are certainly some folks in some quarters that are already raising alarm bells saying, how can we continue to do this? This is dangerous, effectively printing money, monetizing debt. But a couple of things to keep in mind. Number one, were you to go back to World War II, this country effectively borrowed, 30% of GDP and devoted it almost exclusively, obviously, to defense for 3+ years, right? No one blinked in the aftermath of World War II and thought that that was money that was, ill spent. And effectively, as the economy grew in the ensuing decades, that debt effectively became, a moot point. And so I think that that's the kind of mentality that has to be taken. It's not the debt that's piling on now, it's the long-term economic damage that's going to occur with an unwillingness to continue to, effectively print money like this. And the idea that it's going to somehow create inflation, right, which I hear, every once in a while. This is preposterous. The only way you get inflation, right, with this amount of purchasing power is if you run up against resource constraints. You have an economy that's operating at like 50 or 60%. There is no resource constraint at this point, and it seems ridiculous to assume that you're somehow going to run up against a resource capacity anytime soon. And the day that would happen, and inflation would start to accelerate, right, which a lot of you hear folks that are worried about this. The easiest solution to any kind of pending inflationary problem down the road is taxation, right? You inject it into the economy so that it can be spent, and when you need it to, be removed from the economy, you tax it away, right? I mean, this is, you don't need a PhD in economics to understand how money can be put into an economy and how it can be quickly pulled back out, right?
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cook. I'm going to let you close on a relatively high note then. So
Yes.
that was a positive outlook to some extent. So again, we really appreciate you being here with us today. Quickly, I'm going to turn it over to John Kelly for a marketing and membership report. John?
Thank you, Doug. Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see everyone. Cyberly speaking. Let's see. First, Vicki and Doug wanted me to report on the Business at the Beach Expo. So you may recall that the Business at the Beach Expo, as it normally has been, was scheduled for April 22nd. Of course, that needed to be postponed. We put that to September 23rd. And we just wanted to report to everyone that we are moving forward with a virtual Business Expo on September 23rd. We've come to the realization that in-person is not going to work by then for a bunch of different reasons, but we are moving forward with a virtual expo event. We're in the process of researching some virtual trade show software platforms. And I must say that there's some really cool stuff out there I've been coming across. Some of it a little expensive, but some pretty terrific things. So we're just waiting to get the approval on which platform we might be using. But I think any of the ones that we choose are going to give our exhibitors and sponsors a great opportunity to still showcase their products and services to the business community. We still plan to promote the event to the business public so that we have a good attendance. And when the virus hit, the show was already halfway full. So we're going to look forward to a great show. We're also lining up some educational speakers, so it should be a nice day of networking and also some education. So just stay tuned for that and mark your calendars for September 23rd. In the coming near future, a whole lot more information will be coming out. So we look forward to doing the expo on September 23rd. Also have here on the agenda, we wanted to announce our newest members, like we like to do. First, we have Titan Power and Gas. I know their representative, Randy Sowers, is on the call today. So if you'd want, scroll through your participants and give Randy a little shout, say hello, and if you felt like scheduling a little meeting or call with him, I encourage you to do that. We also have Gallery de May, Art Gallery and Cape May, the Ravioli House Restaurant in the Wildwoods, Cartridge World of Rio Grande, Penn Jersey Paper, and then also a brand new member, UVC Box. They have a really, really interesting UV virus prevention tool particularly for lodging and really for any office building and things like that. It's not chemical based. It's not a mist. It's not a spray. It's a UV situation. So pretty cool. They want to come on board and let our members know that this product is available. So you may see more about that. So Doug, those are the new members, and I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, John. Next up, Amy for an Education Foundation report. Amy?
Good afternoon, everyone. I was on mute, so I wanted to let you know that we are still moving forward with the golf tournament for the Education Foundation. That is scheduled for September 15th, and we will be at the Stone Harbor Golf Club. And we are, according to, the COVID-19 protocols, we have made some changes to the event to keep everyone's safety in mind. It's still going to be, a great event, a great day of golf. We are going to do an 18-hole scramble. You will have a boxed lunch. We're still planning on having some different contests on the course. There will also be some refreshments and snacks as well. And there will be a takeaway box dinner since we can't hold a dinner after the event. You're also going to receive, if you play in the tournament, a $25 Pro Shop voucher that you can use at the club, which was, something that's great that Stone Harbor Golf Club is providing to us. We do still need sponsors and golfers for the event. So if you're interested, you can go on the Chamber's website and register. And I also wanted to let everyone know that Francie Burke is going to be our honoree for this year and next year, since Francie, had so many great ideas, and we had a lot of momentum going with the tournament so far. So we wanted to make sure that Francie was able to be our honoree for next year as well, when hopefully things return back to normal and we can have all the great amenities and everything that we wanted to include in this tournament. I also wanted to mention that we are going to be participating in Kindle's Oktoberfest on October 3rd. That we'll have some more details to follow on that, but they are looking for wineries, breweries, distilleries, and other vendors for the event. If you're interested, you can reach out to Christine Alessi at Kindle to get more information from her as well for that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Amy. And Vicki for our president's report.
So don't have a whole lot to share with you today. Would like to give a shout out to Rachel and Allison in the office. They are not only appropriately social distancing, but they have their masks on. So give a wave, Rachel and Allison. Thanks very much for holding the fort down there. And also, Joe Molyneux, I see you, Joe, there. If you'd like to unmute yourself, and if you have anything you want to share about how people can get the Safely Together information. I know you are out and about delivering all those great supplies for people to mask up and promote spreading their wings, not the virus.
Yeah, absolutely. Cape May County as a county, and I know the Chamber was instrumental in getting involved in the Safely Together, the design, the concepts, the county, of course, and the people that worked on it. They did an excellent job. The creators of that made it's a fun campaign with a very serious message. It's, you have to mask up, social distance, but it's themed. And I've been lucky enough to be out working with a lot of the businesses, consulting with them through this, through Cape May County. And every time I deliver them, first of all, the requests came fast and furious. I was driving all up and down throughout the county, dropping them off. And then I would do a little consulting when I was there, which was good. So it worked. But the response of the people, they just love it. Their eyes light up when they see it, and they say, this is going to look so good in my window. And then you can also download it if you go to the Safely Together. I think it's Safely Together, Cape May, right? Nina, can you would you be able to put the link for the people that might not know about it? I think the Chamber did a good job promoting it. But yeah, that's available. It's really good to hear from someone like Oliver Cook if you're a business owner, because that's good information. I mean, it's not all positive, but when you understand that this help is rolling out, and we know it's not enough, but that's why the county took this so seriously, and they were sort of on the spear of trying to get the information out to the businesses, accomplish that, but also staying on top of everything that we can possibly do. I mean, we know what our season and what our drivers are economically here, and the help is available. So I'm going to give my phone number. I've been getting a lot of calls and a lot of emails, but I just got two. I was on the call, actually. That's why I darkened up for a second. I had just to answer them to set up a time to meet with people and call. It's 609-465-1085. That's 609-465-1085. Write that down. Let me know if you need anything. And most importantly, it's a great reason for me to get out. I was actually down in Cape May this morning, and then jumped on this Zoom. I wanted to be here to support the Chamber. So thanks, everybody. And like I said, I'm happy to be in it with you guys. I understand the severity. And also the loans, don't forget, they did extend the PPP if you haven't taken advantage, or if you thought you were ineligible before. A lot of people were having them revisit it, and there are still lenders, not just your typical commercial bank lenders, which are great, but there's also those financial intermediaries that are still doing those loans, and they're seasoned and ready to do it. So let me know. And that includes the EIDL loan as well. You can still jump in. Yeah, and I just hope more comes, and we'll be ready for it. And thank you, Vicki, for the time. I know I took a little too much time, but thank you so much for the opportunity to share what we're trying to accomplish here and what you guys as a group, the Chamber, has been doing. And I'll sing your praises forever on this. This has been so important to the businesses in the community.
Thanks, Joe. And recently, there were 6 or 8 more Cape Maynians designed and launched, specific to some additional industries in the county. So take a look at those. They're on safelytogethercmc.com. And you can also download the free posters and other social graphic designs for you, everything. If you need more help, contact Joe, contact Nina. Also, just wanted to let you know that the Chamber is moving forward with planning its annual meeting, which will be in October. If you're interested in being on our committee, please let me know. We'd love to have you join us with that. And also, our next meeting will be Thursday, August 20th. That will be our legislative update sponsored by Comcast. And our special guest will be Congressman Van Drew. So we look forward to having him join us and hearing about everything that's happening on the federal front. With that, it would just ask that you, continue to look forward to our daily updates. We try to bring you all of the information that is hot off the press and keep you informed with everything that we know, all the resources. that can help you in your daily business and your employees just manage through this crisis. With that, Doug, I'm going to turn it back over to you because I know there's a lot of background going on here.
Sure.
Excuse me, background noise. Excuse me.
Thank you, Vicki. Just real quick, as we would do if we were in person, does anyone have any announcements that they'd like to share with the group? You can use the raise hand feature and Nina will call on you, or you can, I'm sure, use the chat as well. But does anyone have any announcements that you would like the group to know about? While we're waiting for that, Vicki, we still have a few signs left to sell, right, for our supporting our first responders. So if anyone's interested in that as well.
We do. We have a few signs and that promote all the great work that Cape Regional Medical Center has been doing on the front line to help those affected with COVID. And all of the proceeds for the signs go to support their PPE materials. So we're anxious to cut that check and make that donation. So please, let us know if you'd like to have a sign. They're $19 and we will hand deliver the sign to you.
Yeah, that would be great. We're almost to the finish line on that, so we have a few more to go. So any help's appreciated. Just let Vicki or John know about that. So Nina, have you seen anything come across? Does anyone have anything?
I am not seeing anything, Doug.
Okay. Well, I want to thank Dr. Cook again for taking the time today to join us. Really, always insightful information. We'll have you back again soon, hopefully. We're going to leave that positive note you ended us with, so I'm going to hold on to that. Vicki, you also want me to mention that we have a 30-minute networking session after this. So anyone, would that be right? Anyone who wants to stay on can do some networking.
Yes, just don't leave the meeting. Hang around just like you would at any other in-person meeting, and we'll do some networking here all together. And depending on how many folks we have with us, we will break off into meeting rooms.
Okay. Well, thank you again, everyone, for their time. Enjoy the rest of the day and your weekend. Thank you.